Good afternoon, everyone, and we are back in session once again. Just for those who have just walked in or perhaps are listening today, at 10 o'clock, the board interviewed Dr. Ronald Scott Fritz, currently from Osceola County. In a few minutes, we'll be interviewing Dr. Peter Licata from Palm Beach County. And following Dr. Licata's interview, we'll have a 15-minute break, and then we will convene to interview Dr. David Moore from Miami-Dade County. So at this time, if Dr. Licata is ready, we will have Dr. Licata enter the room. Dr. Licata. Normally I'd say the seat's hot, but it's not because you're in this, what do we call it, the cold storage room today, I think. But so the
it's a little chilly,
nice
yes.
It's a little chilly
for a Florida boy. It's very chilly.
It is. Trying to keep everybody alert, I will guess, in here today. Dr. Licata, we're so glad that you're here. I want to take a few minutes to introduce the folks around us today, and so I'll begin with introducing school board member from District 3, Miss Linda Cuthbert, and next to her, school board member from District 5, Mr. Ruben Colon. Over here is our agency clerk, Connie Spire, school board member from District 1, Jamie Haynes. And our vice chair and school board member from District 2 is Miss Ida Wright. Our chief financial officer is sitting here, and that is Miss Deborah Muller. I am the chair, and my name is Carl Persis, and it's once again so nice of you to come from beautiful Palm Beach, Florida, and to be up here. Did you have a nice stay last night?
It's been phenomenal. Reminds me of Palm Beach County about 30 years ago. There was room to drive. There's farms. It's not a house in every corner. Difference is people smile a lot more here sometimes. They wave, and your traffic is a lot more manageable, shall we say. But I love Palm Beach County, but this is a beautiful place. When my wife and I drove over the bridge the other day, she saw me grab the wheel a little tighter, and she said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "This really looks like a place we could stop at."
Yeah, isn't that great? Isn't that great? Dr. Cloud, if you'll just pull that microphone a little bit closer to you. There we go. I want to take also a second to introduce some of the folks that are in the audience. It's always good to know who is sitting behind you, right? So let me start with, I didn't introduce them last time, but Pat Drago and Patricia Crosby, they're both here from the League of Women Voters. All right, well, now that you're up, now you're going to have to do this for everybody. Elizabeth Albert she is the president of our Teachers Association. Carol Sawyer, Carol's there. She's the head of our AFSCME union. Let me see who I get here. Greg Aiken is right over here. He's chief of operations there, Mr. Aiken. Stacy Manning is our general counsel. And he is there as well. So thank you all for being in the audience, and we will go ahead then and start with our opening questions, just so you get an idea of the time frame on this. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and then we're going to go around. Each board member has questions. We've allotted about 12 minutes per board. And if we don't use all that allotted time, then we'll be able to go around perhaps and ask another question. So, and then at the end of all this, we'll certainly give you time for any closing comments that you would like to make, and or any questions about the process or questions to the board you may have after all of this, feel free to ask, okay? I don't want you to feel like we're pressed for time, but we are kind of on a schedule, okay? So the first question to you, Dr. Licata, is what is the most important part of the superintendent's job, and why do you think so?
I believe the most important part of the superintendent's job is being the educational leader for the Leader that,
There we
am I
go.
back?
There we go.
Wow. If they don't have a leader that they see what models the expectations every single day and every action, then they're lost. They don't have a direction and they choose their own. And we have to face the district as a team. We can't do it individually.
And I appreciate you saying that. And why do you feel that's so important?
Leadership is about making everyone around you better. And when you model that and when you give everyone their targeted goal, what's best for every child, the business community gets involved, the school gets involved, the local universities get involved, the parents get involved. And when you have that model and you know that that person leading the district is showing everyone how the expectations and the goals and the one unified voice that comes from the board and the team, then we become a unified force that does do best for all children.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. My next question is, as we select a new superintendent, what are the top 3 strengths, attributes you believe you bring that our district could benefit from?
Well, I don't know if I can count this as one of them, but it's that beautiful woman over there, my wife, Judith Licata.
That's a good move, Dr. Licata.
Yeah, well,
that's a good move.
I'm no dummy. But my biggest strength is relationships. I have a lot of strengths, but that stands out clearly. I think if you speak with everyone in the district office that I was in for almost 9 years and then moved to the regional office, I think everyone from the 3 Lewises that are the custodians on each floor to the cafeteria folks and every staff member, I made it a point to make sure they understood that I heard what they said and that they were important. And speaking to people and listening probably is my best. So when you say communication and relationships, listening to people and not just waiting for them to stop talking so you can put your viewpoint in, listening to them and understanding what they're saying, and then build your response from that, not have a predisposed response, as we see so much in social media and such, to listen to people. So that's my strength. The other one is organizational strength, organizational awareness, and organizational acuity towards processes and systems. You cannot run an efficient organization that's limited funds with finite money from the state and have a disorganized or not a good process for everything. You know, you have to put a system in place for people to understand what their direction is, and that process has to be clearly spelled out. And I have put those systems and processes in place over and over and over again everywhere I've been, and my success is detailed in the resumes. But it's not just happenstance. You can be great at relationships, but you still have to be able to put pen to paper and still be able to have organizational strengths to make sure students understand they're getting the very best in every school as they move along, not just in some schools. And finally, I would have to say, well, you're asking for 3, so I'm going to shut it down to 3. I would have to say the ability to reach for every child. My history is very clear that closing the achievement gap was a strength of mine, offering multiple opportunities for areas in our district that didn't used to get those opportunities. The children that look similar were afforded now opportunities that every other child was getting. And that's important. But I didn't lower the ceiling to close the achievement gap. You can't raise the floor by lowering the ceiling. You have to do both at the same time. And every kid is every kid. We can't forget about the kids that are just flying off the charts, doing so well. We have to make sure they're engaged. But we know that most of our attention also has to be the kids who need to catch up. We need to be that gap. So closing that achievement gap and understanding what it takes and making sure that the students have every opportunity. So an equitable stance at looking at closing the achievement gap. So those 3 I could limit it to because I'm real comfortable with those 3.
Thank you so much. All right, we're going to start our questioning now from other board members, and we'll begin with Ms. Cuthbert.
Curriculum and student achievement. What innovative ideas might you have on the tip of your fingers there for Volusia County schools to address, to increase our graduation rates across all subpopulations?
So I looked at the graduation rate, and I looked at some of the college readiness pieces. Many students aren't being exposed, and this is certainly in no way, shape, or form a negative towards the district, but there are many opportunities for students to be taking advanced and college courses that are not offered them right now. That would be conquered simply through a master schedule analysis before the prior year. We've been gatekeepers on certain students getting through to college-level advanced courses or acceleration courses. We need to look from the district and from the area offices and say, let's see your master schedule. Let's see what kids potentially could do well here. Just because they've scored a certain score on the FSA shouldn't mean they shouldn't be allowed to even attempt to try. It's our job to give them an opportunity to try. So when you look at offering the opportunity, one of the weaknesses in your areas for graduation rate was, getting college and career ready. There's also the idea that students that are at risk need to be designated as focus students. And you can't wait till the December of their 12th grade year. You have to start looking at their freshman year, because, and I believe you were a high school teacher, kids don't do well in 9th grade. That's what starts there. That starts that process. It's not in 12th grade they drop out. It starts in 9th grade. As a high school principal, my 9th grade was the most important, because by the time they got to 12th grade, I had a handful of kids I could pay attention to all the time to make sure they graduate. But when they come in as 9th graders, if you lose them then, it's really hard to get them back. So we would do some transitioning as well. When we see an 8th grader who's moving on to 9th grade, it's behind already. And the statistics are there. If they've been suspended multiple times, if they're absent more than 10 days, their graduation chances drop down into the 30s if they've been multiple suspensions. Those are the kids we bring in early. Those are the students we say, listen, come on in. We're going to get you a head start. We're going to show you everything about this high school, where to get extra help, where's your lunch, where's your locker, what are the rules, here's your classrooms. Those are the schedules we work on first to make sure they're comfortable and they understand that this is their high school and they're going to be successful and they have a good support group around. So I opened up a 9th grade academy when I became high school principal, and the graduation rate was 67%. I say that because it's embarrassing. When I first showed up, within 4 years it was 89%, simply by having relationships with every student and targeting every student. I was fortunate. It was a small high school. There was only about 1,800 kids in there, and I know that's not small by many standards, but I was able to understand every child. I made sure I knew every kid. And I think if you talk to any of those students who still call me, and they're now in their 30s, they'll tell you the same thing. And that's important, making sure they know everyone knows who they are. And that 9th grade academy came through, and that 4th year they came through high school, we left it at 89%. The African-American rate was in the 50s, the Hispanic rate was in the low 60s, and by the end we were all in the 89 percentile. And that, to me, is still one of my best accomplishments, so I hope I'm not ruining a question later on in the day. But that would be one of the main things. Get a master schedule analysis together, look at students who have opportunities that normally don't get opportunities, and make sure we target our freshmen as they come through.
Thank you. As the lead learner of a large school district, how would you influence or create a culture that fosters inclusion, the inclusion of high expectations to close the achievement gap across all our subgroups, such as students with disabilities, students of low social, economic situations, and students of all racial groups? I think you touched a bit.
So I think I touched on students with diversity and poverty and then the achievement gap. Let's look at the other two groups, since I think I covered some of it all. Let's talk about our ELL students. ELL students come here, and I think you're about 15 or 14% in here. They come here, and we assess them with English test-taking skills for the most part, and then we designate where they're going. And that is a good way to start. But just because they don't speak our language doesn't mean they don't know technology, or they don't know how to get an industry certification, or maybe they can be in a Spanish AP course if they speak Spanish. I think we need to look at the ELL students immediately, because just because they don't speak our language as a native language speaker, it doesn't mean they don't have the opportunity to show how smart they are and exceed what our expectations are, and that's what we want. As far as ESE, much the same. ESE students are near and dear to my heart, without a doubt. My wife is an ESE teacher for many years, so I understand that. They should be afforded the same opportunity through inclusions and making sure paraprofessionals are in the classroom. Get our resources together and make sure that they get that extra attention. Don't seclude them, include them, and make sure they have opportunities to focus on getting resources that maybe they are in multiple categories. And you have to pay attention to if a child has multiple marks against them, if they're ESE, if they're in poverty. We know these are indicators of a child that's at risk already. I think every child is at risk, but these are at risk a little bit more. And when you get to that place, you better have resources for them, and we need to provide that. And if we give them the opportunity in advanced courses, if we give them the opportunity in an industry certification, in a CTE course, let's support them. Let's get them through that.
Thank you. Could you tell us a time when you worked with others or used an out-of-the-box approach to achieve academic success?
I hope I'm not ruining this because this is a great answer or a great question. About 6 years ago, I was head of the choice department in CTE and charters, and I realized that we were not tapping every resource we needed. I realized that we were in a place that we were on average when it came to advanced courses, especially before it was even part of the grading system, actually, for middle school. We're just right about there. So I decided that we would invest our Perkins money into creating labs for our middle schools. Computer labs, 32 at a time, or 34, because, 2 are always broken. You put 32 kids in the class, and we would open up industry certifications for middle school, and we did it in every middle school. Some of the middle schools already had their computer labs. We know what those schools look like. The schools that didn't have them, we sort of know what they look like, and that was not going to be a barrier. So I sort of got a tilted head look at Cabinet one day when I said I was going to do this, and the superintendent said, go with it. As long as it doesn't cost any more money, go with it. So we were able to work some things through that. So now we have computer labs in every middle school, and we instituted a technology academy in those schools. And we had the vendor CIW come in, and I'm sorry if I'm not supposed to speak about vendors here, unfortunately. And they came in and did their own professional development. They trained our teachers. We found we had a lot of business ed teachers where that was sort of not popular in middle school anymore, but the certification to teach these courses was a business. So now we trained teachers that were almost becoming extinct because those courses, typing was not one of those courses that we taught anymore. Not only did we put in an academy, technology academy in every single middle school, all 34 of them. We supplied labs for about 10 of them. We were 25%, 2 years ago, 25% of all industry certifications earned in the state of Florida in middle school, just in Palm Beach County. So we were knocking it out of the park. I got the tilted head look from the rest of the folks saying, you're putting industry certification in the middle school. These kids are smart. Children today learn through technology. We learn technology as adults. We learn technology. They learn through technology. And that was a recognition I saw right away. So you'll see a lot of those type of answers from me because I don't think it was that out of the box. It was just forward thinking. Out of the box sometimes scares me, but it was more forward thinking and providing opportunities for everyone.
And that led right into my next one. I don't have to ask
Sure.
the next one because I asked, how do you envision student learning that's online, whether it's STEM or CTE? And the last couple of questions, anything you want to add to
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. Being overseeing as assistant overseeing virtual education for the last few years, and being part of the CTE, being the major leader of the CTE, we have to be careful. We have to be careful about how we see online learning. We have to understand that students should only see an hour a week in online learning unless it's a direct virtual course, because obviously you have to spend all the time in front of it. But when we're in a classroom and even sort of a hybrid environment with the teacher monitoring what's going on, we have to be very careful that we're not letting the student run away with what they have in front of them, and make sure we have accountability systems and exit points that the teacher can follow along and manage that. And that's the managing console at their desk, which most systems have now, which, again, the program I spoke of before in middle school has, and you can see the monitoring of the students. But I think we have to be very careful with screen time. The students, they get enough screen time. We know a lot of it is not educational, but it's still screen time. And we cannot discount the importance of a teacher in front of students instructing them. Mm-hmm. There is no replacement for that. There will never be a replacement, at least in my lifetime. So you can't replace that input and that relationship a teacher provides. And I'm all for moving forward with technology and online education and virtual education, but we have to be very deliberate in our practice and make sure we're understanding that too much is actually a declining rate, as the studies will show.
Thank you. And my last question, how would you assist teachers or school principals in campuses in handling the too many distractions that are going on in the schools right now, like drills, special assemblies, events, fairs, concerts, pull-out meetings. A lot of ESL kids are pulled out. Special events, guest speakers, that any school day brings while preserving, thus supporting the academic learning time and that focus in our schools?
That's a difficult question to answer because the more we
Save
move,
the best for last.
yes, it's difficult because we can't control most of that. We can't control the outside influences in our school. We can control what goes on in our school. And with the system and a process, and let me give you an example. As a high school principal, I knew that when I was first there, the first couple of weeks, I noticed we were interrupting classes. We were making announcements. We had a lot of non-academic things that could have been done at different times. I became the events coordinator. I know that's not a glorious title, but every event had to be scheduled through me and approved by me. There were going to be no announcements made during school day. They were only going to be done at the end of first hour for the 5 minutes, 8 minutes actually we allotted, and that was it. Any other important announcement had to come from me and I would make it. That was one of the biggest things because as a teacher you can understand, getting interrupted in the middle of a lesson, it throws everybody off. And that system was put in place. And then when I became the events coordinator of the school, and I'm not a micromanager in any way, it appeared that we had a lot less activities during that time. All of a sudden they started decreasing. Now as far as drills, and that's the tough part of the question, the state mandates we do so many drills every year, whether it be fire or safety drills. That's what we've been dealt. It's a fair display of why we should have them. My office is exactly 6 miles from Stoneman Douglas. I understand that. A lot of our communities were involved in that. And when you look at that, you understand why. But that has to be coordinated properly. It doesn't mean you just slam them in at the end of the week when it's 10 days, when the first 2 weeks are up or the first month is up. You coordinate them appropriately. And you work with your teachers and your staff and say, when is the best time? And this is when your teacher cabinet, and I had a teacher cabinet, when is the best time? Let's make sure we're not interrupting lessons. That's important, and that's key. We can control what we control. We can't control outside influences. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, sir, it does. Thank you so much. Mr. Persons.
Thank you, Ms. Cuthbert. And now Mr. Ruben Colon.
Okay, so I'm going to be speaking about internal and external communication. My first question is, how would you ensure that the school board be informed on important matters?
So part of my 100-day plan, that is a draft, discusses communication at length. It talks about the idea that for the first 100 days, you're going to get a voicemail from me every day. You don't have to answer your phone. It'll be on there. And it'll discuss what the day went like. When it comes to important matters or crises, that's a different story. There has to be a central key communicator piece. And I know we have a director of communications who's absolutely wonderful over there. There she is. Very hospitable. Thank you. That has to be key, that's the resource. That's the point that everything goes to in crisis. I want schools to be able to display how great they are. I want schools to be able to show everyone how great some of the kids are doing, what's going on. Crisis time, it needs to come directly to communications and myself. And the second in charge, whoever that would be as when I become superintendent, somewhere, hopefully right here. And that's important, because now you have 3 people that are on the clock all the time, and I think she understands that. And when you have that direct point, then it's immediate phone calls, and it goes to the board chair first, the vice chair, and then so on. If it can be put in a voicemail that we've had something go on at school, everything's fine, it was a false alarm, that's a voicemail to you every day. You click it on at your time. You don't have to answer it. It comes to you, you're up to date. You have questions on it, then you can call me back on that. But keeping you informed for those first few months is very, very important, mostly because you can see what I'm doing. And you can help direct me on what you feel your vision is as a school board, on what I need to pay attention to maybe more that I'm not seeing. So that's external communication. Internal communication. Anything of significance and policy change comes here, and that comes through my office. And there's a tree. Through board docs, you'll see the tree at the bottom, and we use board docs as well. And that tree has to be very well defined. And that person who signs that bottom that says, this is approved, moving to the next, they are held accountable that they've read every word, and they understand that it is 2019, it's not 2018, because then it has to go back. That is clear. That process must be very clear, and there's part of that systems and processes. It must go through that tree, and it must be signed by them in a timely manner. he or she who's in charge of that area has to be absolutely accountable as it moves through. Internal communications for other issues outside of policy changes has to go through the proper channels, and if it's a school-related issue, it goes through the area office. I'm used to the area office pattern. As a regional, we're a regional, not an area, and having 60 schools under me, it goes to my instructional superintendents, which I have 4 of them, and then it comes to me. If it's significant enough, then I move it up to our director of communications. But internally, it goes through my instructional superintendents to me. And with that relationship and communication piece I have with my leaders, they know when it's time to tell me something, and they know it's time. So it's about being open, transparent, and honest, but also knowing who's your next phone call. And sometimes it's not an email, it's not a text, it's a phone call. So that environment will be very clear, because you as the board have to stand in front of your constituents and make sure they're informed of everything as well.
Great, thank you. When a new superintendent is hired, we want to make sure the transition is smooth as possible for everyone. How would you help both the educational community and the community at large adjust to the new governing style that will come with the new superintendent?
I believe that as a leader or as a superintendent, I work for the entire district. That can't be accomplished on how everyone feels about that unless I go to the community first. And as I start in that transition, I would make sure that I'm available to them in their community, not on my terms, on their terms, in their churches, in their communities, every community that needs to be heard. It's easier for me to go there and let them be comfortable in their home. And if that means teachers and business leaders and moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas, which I am, proud grandpa. I know you're looking at me saying, wait, he's way too young to have a grandchild. Or at least I say that to myself. You don't have to do that. I say it to myself every day. But it's important we go to there, because we do hear from the same communities. And it's important we hear from every community, but sometimes we hear from the same community often, and sometimes we never hear from certain communities. So once I get a feel for that, and once we do group sessions with them and let them work in work groups with what they want to see, what is really good in this district? What is the best thing in this district so I don't touch it? What are we doing really well that needs to be maybe pushed a little bit more? Let me touch that. And what do we need to see that we could do better? And what do they want to see better? What kind of programs do they want? And when you meet with each community, then you put it together, and that helps transition. They'll understand immediately that I'm the person you can walk up to and say, I don't like this. And I'm not going to say, well, go see the area superintendent. I said, well, tell me what you want, and then we'll talk about it. And if it's something significant, obviously, I have to come to you. But at the end of the day, these meetings will show that I'm here to listen, and that goes back to listening. I'm going to listen to you. I'm not going to wait for you to stop talking. And that's key. And then we bring it back. And the cabinet would sit down, and we would beat it up a little bit and say, why aren't we doing this? How can we do this? Nobody likes this. Why are we still doing it? Is it effective? Does it mean something we have to do by state? And then beat up each one of those categories that parents from all the communities. I'm thinking somewhere from 7 to 10 to big county, because you want to get every community. And then we beat it up from there. And then we make those adjustments. And then we communicate out through our communications director. We've listened, and we're going to work on these things. I think a response, knowing that the people who we represent, all of us, will be very happy with that.
Great, thank you. What methods of communicating with parents have you found most effective, and how would you encourage and leverage parental involvement?
So there are 2 different types of parental communications. Informational, which can go out in multitudes of ways, through Twitter, through Facebook. I think there's a Facebook account here, Twitter. These are general information. If it's talking about specifics of a school, it needs to be from that principal. If it's something that details there was an issue on campus today. But if it's really important, it's got to be a phone call from me if it's that big. It's got to be a phone call from the principal first. That is the only way to communicate to parents. They don't want to read it in an email. They don't want to hear about it through different sources. We are very clear that principals are the first line to talk to their parents. And once it gets, because principals usually resolve it, and parents try and circumvent sometimes. They're trying to get what they need for their child. But we've entrusted our principals to be in charge of their school, let them be in charge. And if it can't be resolved, then it goes through them. But it's got to be a parent phone call. We make phone calls, or we meet in person. We don't send emails, and we don't get into an email discussion over a lengthy issue.
Great, thank you. And because we do have a little bit of more time remaining, how do you envision yourself being available in a proactive way to our stakeholders who we've talked about parents, we've talked about employees, but your relationship with the media and being able to stay in front of the dialogue rather than always being at a responsive nature to.
Unfortunately, sometimes, or most of the time, we are in a reactive mode as a school district. We understand that. But there have been many times where the superintendent and previous superintendent, can you call so-and-so at the newspaper? You're the only one they listen to. You have a good relationship with them. I'm out in front of a lot of things, and I give them the heads up. But I always have asked them this. Please be respectful and give us an opportunity to explain the situation instead of hearing one side. And we will give you everything you want. Any type of public records, if you're not getting it within a week, call me. I'll make sure it's there. But the communications to the media is really, it's a tough, it can be a slippery slope if you let it and you continually react to it. But if you're out front and transparent and honest and let them know what's going on, I think you garnish their respect and they understand they can call you and get the right answer from you. And that's been my success. If you speak with the reporters from the Palm Beach Post or the Sun Sentinel or any of the news stations, they will tell you that when they call me, I answer the phone. And I said, make sure, give me 24 hours to answer this before you run anything on that. And we've had a lot of success in that. And as a regional superintendent, I've thwarted several things already this year in that manner. Communication to the business community and the main stakeholders is strong as well. Parents don't want to hear about something that happened on their student's campus through the news. I mean, that has to get out right away. And I think you were referring to that as well, all stakeholders. And we do that through informational. That's that informational piece.
Great,
So.
thank you. I'll yield the rest of my time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Colon. And we're moving on now, and next will be from school board member, Ms. Jamie Haynes.
Hello. My section is on human resources.
Okay.
So the first question is, in our system, the superintendent handles the operations of a variety of programs and duties due to the size of the system. Explain your specific experiences with exceptional student education, federal programs, and career tech.
Okay. I may have to come back to the other two, but let me start with exceptional student education. And I believe you're asking me my role as a leader with ESE. So I've alluded to a little bit earlier about offering opportunities. ESE is not a gray area for me. If a team of teachers and professionals deem that a child needs additional services, it's not gray. The IEP team determines that, and that's what we provide. And we do a careful and long, lengthy study to make sure it's accurate. And when that becomes law, and that becomes part of the child's record, we adhere to it. We adhere to it. I was a principal of some high needs students, 254, 255 for the funding people in the world, in the classroom, or in the boardroom. They needed services all the time. And being an advocate for the student is an immediate impression for my teachers, and at the high school as well, that I was going to support what the child needs. We're not here to try and deny services. We're not here to try and distinguish what services they should get. It was clear what they should get. The professionals decide, and we're going to support it. I think you'll find a huge ESE following from me because I've defended many parents in IEP meetings that turned the other way and simply said, no, we need to provide this. I see this child every day and they're not doing well. More services. Services come at a cost, and that's key. So as you look at certain budgets, including the one that I think you led for a few years here in the district, we have to make sure we're providing more services. And I think I'll get into that if I have the opportunity later, that we have to provide services and reduce positions that are not really on the books. There's got to be a position control. There has to be a way to designate, is this position valued? Because as you look at one of the schools I visited this morning, Palm Terrace and Mr. Harris, I felt like I saw myself from 15 years ago. That's the way to do it. I walked into several inclusion classes because I asked them, let me see the inclusion classes. And they not only had the teacher, but they had the paraprofessional in there and another paraprofessional. And you can use that with Title I monies or monies as you look through the financial piece. But the reality is, when you have those resources in there, when you have additional people in there to be attentive to those included students, not secluded. I'm not a fan of pull-out. I never was, never will be. Included, then you see the change. And just look at his scores. 45-point gain last year, not getting the recognition, even though they are under LSI. That man is doing a phenomenal job, and I do not expect to see that school as a D or a C. I'm thinking B or A, because that school is just tearing it up, and he's got it going on there with systems and processes. So I really was impressed with him. I was impressed with my other middle school, but that really hit me hard when I was able to go see those ESE courses with that inclusion and just dynamic teaching and assistance.
So the other two areas under that are federal programs and career tech.
Well, the federal programs, I think I tied a little bit into there. Remember, we have to be careful about our students who don't get the opportunities at home. We got to make sure we're providing it before school if we can and after school. And I think there was a recent time change for the bell schedule. So I know that we're looking at Volusia County. We are looking at making sure we're providing services early in the morning school. Those resources are important. And they're there for a reason, and they're provided by the government to us to provide for those students who need those additional services, and it needs to stay that way. And it has to be true educational practice going on in these. It's not daycare, it's not recess time, and recess time is important, but it has to be an academically focused with folks that are running it, understanding where the weaknesses are with the students. And I think the last area was
Career tech.
Career tech. I know a little bit about career tech. It's my favorite. Career tech, and I think I alluded to it in several different questions, we need to offer as many opportunities as we can to all our students. Gone are the days of people feeling they have to go to college. It's preparing them for college, and it's preparing for career. That's not our choice to give them. It's our choice to make sure they have it. They make the choice on where they go. I was unable to go to college right away, even though I had basketball scholarships and academic scholarships, because my father became very ill, who was a teacher for 30 years. If I didn't have any of those skills I got from my high school in the construction academy, I wouldn't have been able to provide for my family and help them and be able to pay the bills and the mortgages. I did later go back to college, as you can see. But I remember that. And my brothers are still in the contracting industry, and I was with them. And if I didn't have that skill, and we were poor, and my father wasn't working at the time, Mom was sick as well, I didn't have those skills. I wasn't able to, and my brothers, we weren't able to provide for pay those mortgages. So every kid deserves that. I don't care where you are on the spectrum. CTE is the way of the future, and I know some people still call it vocational. I'm okay with that. But college and career ready, give them the skills. Give our kids the skills and let them make the decision. Because college isn't getting cheaper, last I checked. I have 4 children. I understand that point. Did I answer that?
Yes.
Okay.
From a district perspective, explain how student performance standards impact planning and prioritizing of facilities, fiscal, technological, and human resource projects.
Okay. I'll try and break that down into bits, and I may have to ask you to repeat those back ends for me. I'm going to go back to what I saw over at Palm Terrace. We talked about his facility and his ESE. So I looked at that and said, this is the ideal situation that we always try and get. Building looked beautiful. It was clean. It was presentable. Kids were in a clean, safe place, organized. That facility apparently needed some attention. When we're talking about schools that are at risk or on the state's watch list, our attention has to be there. Remember, we don't get there unless we're not doing something right. We get there and we stay away from there in that watch list by doing the right things and making sure all the schools have the right resources. But in a reactive mode, we better be able to double down, and that's what I call it, double down in the classrooms with a paraprofessional. We better be able to provide additional services in the morning and the afternoon and provide a clean environment, a safe environment. And with that piece in student achievement, now you have the ability to look at the specifics of what is not doing well. Learning gains, obviously, is struggling in the district right now, and there's no excuse for learning gains to be that. And when you get to those paraprofessionals being in those and doubling down, they can address that individually with those kids, and it should be targeted. One of the things I would need to see is what are the midterm assessments? Where are they? So we can target these schools. I don't expect LSI to be here. I hope they're not by next year. But that'll be the last visitor that comes in to tell us how to run our schools, and no offense, because it's a great operation, it's a great organization, but we're going to run our schools, and we're going to make sure we're running them the right way, and that's putting a focus on where resources are needed. So I think I got that, but there's a couple more pieces to it.
So basically, it's that student performance standards and the impact that planning, prioritizing of facilities, your fiscal part.
Okay, so now we're looking at planning. Are you speaking specifically of planning for the schools or teacher planning?
Planning for using your resources to raise student achievement.
We have a report card for each school, and as we look through with the academic team as well as the business side, the cabinet, we have to look at each school and their needs. And planning starts with those schools. Just like we started planning with the schedule for the students at risk coming from 8th grade to high school, that's where we start planning with our fiscal resources. It's not to take away from schools that have a lot more. It's to make sure that the schools that don't have. We work, and we play in the same arena, but the arena looks different in different areas. And it's our job to make sure we equalize that and putting our resources in the right place to see that our arena looks the same everywhere and everyone has the equitable opportunity. And that's where you start with your planning, right there. What schools need it the most first.
So moving on, to what degree do you believe responsibilities can and should be delegated to principals? And how would you hold them accountable for accomplishing those responsibilities?
Should I step in and become your superintendent, I'd be honored, first of all. But most importantly, we've entrusted the people who lead our schools right now to lead them. And we have to give them continue that operation by supporting them. Principals are given that autonomy to run their schools and run it to the best of their ability. Should there be some problems, then it's our job as the district support, as a superintendent, to provide the supports in the area that they are not able to run their schools. And sometimes it may not be in their control. There's something that I would bring in to the district, and it's called the Principal's Dashboard. I have a copy here. I'll show you all tomorrow. And it has every column of every needed data statistic for the entire school. Absentee days, suspension days, how many teacher vacancies, Title I students, right down the line, everything, you name it. And then it also has their data on their performance. That is updated daily. Remember what I said before, when a child is suspended twice and misses a lot of school and are in poverty, the likelihood of them succeeding is almost nil. Principals need to see that, and they need to see it every day. So it's pulled up on my dashboard every day, and you'll see that the data sells, and it's updated through the current systems. And you'll see that it is a common place to walk into the principal's office and say, your suspension rates are going up, and they're level 1 or 2 suspensions, which means they're tardies or too many missing a Saturday school. It's not a significant event. Why are you sending this child home? We want to keep our campuses safe, but 5 tardies is not a worthy reason to send a child home, and that shows up on this dashboard. So I'm not a big fan of suspension. I understand it's peace in the world, but I believe that we put the proper systems in place, put the right people in play where students have a place to go to. I think we'll see a significant drop in those. SEL is big now, is a big fan.
How would you address the issues of safety and security?
As an educator and going to school to learn how to be an educator at one point, I don't remember the class on school safety. I don't remember the class about weapons in schools. I remember learning how to teach and reach out to children. Unfortunately, that has become a significant piece of what we do every day, and the state has made it very clear that we are going to focus on it. I mentioned earlier I'm 6.5 miles from Stoneman Douglas, and it affected many of the communities, and we had some of us students spill over into our district, and that was okay. Right, beginning of last year, and I'm going to give you an example of how I do it. Beginning of last year, we had a shooting at one of our football games at night by adults from the street. into a crowd of about 5,000 people. And you want to talk about crisis communication. You want to talk about how do you get it to the board, how you get it to the news and make sure everything is right. The next day, superintendent asked me to go ahead and put out a safety plan for all activities after school and have it done by the end of the week. I worked with our school police. We came up, and within 2 weeks, we had magnetic signs all over. We had published it through the newspaper. We had published it through the news that no one was allowed to bring anything in. You were not allowed to come in after halftime. You were going to go through metal detectors and handheld devices for everyone that walked through. It was setting the table to say, when you come, we cancel football for the next week. And then the second week went off without an absolute hitch. We actually had business donors call and say, we will donate clear bags for women that want to bring their purses in or their items in. It was a community effort because we reached out and said, this can't happen to our community. It happened next door, and you can't go back. So within 2 weeks, I had a clear safety plan for the entire district on every event. And when you talk about 23 high schools, 34 middle schools, and get it done in 2 weeks, we did a great job. And I believe there's a county somewhere near here, maybe even here, that stole that entire plan, which was perfect, because Miami-Dade stole it and so did Broward, because it was so set in a way of maintaining safety. One of the things that we have to do as well is make sure that we understand Fortify Florida's out there, and it's starting to get cleaned up a little bit. I mean, I get the 30 messages a day. But we also have to know that students have a way to go to somebody. And there's that relationship piece. They have to have a campus where they know they can go to an adult. I saw that on 2 campuses today, and I was very comfortable with what I saw. One had a Daytona Beach police officer, which was wonderful because I believe that's the agreement there. Another had a security or a guardian, which was wonderful. And the principal was bragging about the guardian because he became a member of the school, became a part of the school. And students didn't see this as a threatening person. It was someone they could go to. And that is about the communication piece. So I think I talked to you about safety. Safety is huge. But the police chief who just came on, he said, why are you doing this? You're assistant superintendent of choice and innovation. Why are you doing safety? Because I was asked, and because I know all the facilities and my broad experience in being in regional and area and alternative ed and charter schools and seeing all that I would have a perspective of everything there. And with a lot of cooperation from a lot of people in that district, we came together because we knew what could happen, and we don't want that anymore.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Haynes, too. And now we'll have questions from our Vice Chair, Ms. Ida Wright.
Thank you. Good afternoon again.
Good afternoon.
Fiscal management. Our funding budget concerns are paramount to the continued success of the district. Please describe the process you have used when budget cuts have been necessary, and please expand on your position related to budget reserved dollars.
Okay, that's a 2-part question, and I'll try and tie them together, but I think I can. So to start with the first part about a budget cut process, about 5-6 years ago, all the divisions were asked to reduce 5%. And I know that in this district, you guys have been really hard on the DCD. You're working through it. It's cost you, I think, roughly $10 million a year for 16 years. And I think if you look at your deficit and what you've tapped into, you wouldn't have to tap into anything, actually be a surplus. Unfortunately, I'm coming from a district that actually benefits from that, but it's unfair saying that you guys do not. And I know that a push to at least keep everyone at 1 is always a good thing. Keep everyone at least 1.0. That's a fair shake. But when you talked about budget cuts, I knew I had to reduce 5% in my divisions, and especially in the choice area, where we give $15 million to about 42 schools that we've been giving for the last, 15 years. And that was going to be easy because some schools were getting near $900,000 to $1 million, and some schools were only getting $200,000. And this was to keep their choice programs. And this is when we only had about 150 choice programs. We've doubled that since. So by reducing some of the monies that went to the schools that were now sustainable, they had been sustainable, and they were really had additional or surplus abilities to provide more education, we realized that we could cut back there. So I got together a group of principals, sat with the director and the specialists, and we talked about where we could cut. Not only did we cut 5% without real pushback, because the schools knew they were already getting money, surplus money. We increased the cut to 10% and took the additional 5% and opened new programs in schools that weren't getting money, that had students that needed to see some programs, like new arts programs, like technology programs, like construction academies, health informatics in one of our schools, and I know that's near and dear to someone's heart here. We were the only middle school. I was able to open up a middle school health informatics academy. That was the only one in the country at that time. And you know how important that is. And they fed right into a school that was a medical school, biotech school, or a technology school, a business school. So we were able to expand programs, cut the budget, not 5%, but we did 10%, and there was a little pushback. But when you showed on paper what it meant, everyone was in agreement this was for the greater good. And it only affected about 10 schools, some maybe a unit, some maybe supply money, but it was involved. Not everyone agreed with it, but understood it. So I came to consensus, and I had the principals involved and well. So that was one of my big wins when you cut the budget, and that's my normal process. Get the people involved, the stakeholders, and sometimes that means when you're cutting budgets, you have to get outside agencies as well to represent what's best for the communities. But you always have to have the principal buy-in too. They're important. They're our school leaders. They're the ones that need to understand, and they're on the front line with teachers. So we have to make sure we listen to them and get their input. So the other half of that question would be, I'm sorry.
That's okay. And expand on your position related to budget reserve dollars.
Budget reserve dollars are supposed to be reserve dollars. They should be the last resort, and you can only tap into budget reserve dollars only so many times. In order to maintain a high credit rating for the district, you can't go below a certain percentage. And I know this district is about 2 points away from that, which is pretty safe and comfortable. But really comfortable is about 7 or 8% with budget reserve dollars. Right now, I think you're just over 5. You can't get into keeping that credit rating is vital. I believe that an audit of many different departments and seeing what is being spent and where it's being spent, position control, and reducing the outflow of money that we don't have, that we have to tap into reserve, is the best way to do this. So that's one of the things I would like to implement with your assistance and your guidance on how to go about looking carefully at every position in the district and how it relates to student achievement. Understand that student achievement is our focus, but there are ancillary pieces that make student achievement possible. Kids aren't learning if they're not on a bus to school. They don't feel safe, and they're hungry. It's not happening. So we would have to really look at that position control piece and reduce that, because you can't keep spending more money than you have. And we can't lose that credit rating, because there are some implications in that I think we all know, and it's not a good place for a school district to be in that place. Did I answer that?
You answered my question.
Okay.
What is the largest budget you've been responsible for or had to oversee? And what was the greatest opportunities and challenges in that budget?
So you could go with the 60 schools that I oversee right now. That's not really a fair, because the principals are the direct leader of their budget, and they're only working with about 4% of that budget ins and outs. It used to be about 10% when I was a principal. Now it's only about 4%. So I'm going to stay away from that, because that's 60 large schools, 3 elementary schools that are over 1,200 students, a couple high schools, 4,000 students. That's the biggest budget. That's probably not the fair answer here, because I think you're looking to see other places. So as Assistant Superintendent of Choice and Innovation, we had the charter schools, we had the adult ed, the community ed, we had alternative education, we had all athletics, we had all the medical and all 187 nurses. We had all of choice and career options. We had homeschool and we had virtual school. So when you add up all that, I believe it was in excess of $50 million. Managing that is not hard when you have the right leaders in charge. Managing that when you don't have the right leaders, or you've been spending money in the same place with no accountability, was difficult. And we had 2 places like that. And we realized that we couldn't keep getting letters from the state about money and about attendance when it came to adult education. So we went through an audit with my new director, who was a high school principal. And within 2 years, and I'm expecting Palm Beach County will not get a letter from the state about budgeted items and attendance with adult ed. Remember, we have over 50 adult ed sites down there, adult and community ed. That's a city. We have over 20,000 students that come to school at night, mostly parents, and we have a bunch running during the day with our elementary schools. And that was one of the areas we put money into. We opened up a bunch of satellites in elementary schools where the parents would drop their children off and take ESOL and GED courses alongside their children in another wing. So when they came home, they could discuss about language and learning and reading. Remember, if we educate the parents, half the battle is done, because many of these students' parents don't speak English. So that was one of the ways we were able to look at a budget that wasn't being done quite well, and now in perfect shape, as well as redirecting and reallocating for benefits.
How would you approach the budget process to ensure success during financially challenging times?
There has to be 3 sets of things in front of you on this. The first being student achievement. Our main job is student achievement. It's student achievement. What goes into that is a bunch of different things. Again, bus drivers and cafeteria and maintenance. But it's student achievement is the number one priority. The other piece is your leadership. Everyone here who leads a division should be capable of understanding where their weaknesses are when it comes to budget and where their strengths are, and should be able to report that immediately. So there's student achievement data, your cabinet, and then you have to have, of course, outside entities, business, colleges, mom and dads, grandparents, that sit on an audit committee that we process things through. And we do not bring anything to you to approve until all 3 of those things have been met. And when those 3 are in harmony, and you have everyone agreeing that student achievement is number 1, that the departments could be thinner or need more, sometimes they need more, we have to look at other places, and that the community input and the audit, business, accountants, those people that rely on us to produce the future talent is in agreement, then we sit down and realize this is what we do. And then it is brought to you. It is not brought to you with hope. It is brought to you with concrete data, approval, consensus, and as a one-person plan. The person being the entire district, not just Pete Licata. It has to be in harmony, and that's the plan we stick with.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. Okay, my turn.
Okay.
Would you elaborate just a little bit more? You were a high school principal. Is that right?
Best job in the world. The hardest job in the world.
Best job. Being a principal is the best job. So what makes an effective school?
An effective school is many components. And I saw one this morning. I saw 2, actually. I can't say the middle school was phenomenal. The first thing I look for when I walk on a campus is a child's face. I know that's so elementary, but when you see them smile, when you see them run to the principal, you see that they're happy. You see that it's a good place. But that doesn't mean learning's taking place. It doesn't mean the staff is happy. It just means kids feel happy. But then when you see the staff walk down the street or hallway and make sure they introduce themselves and talk about, and this happened, I have planning next period, I need to get to this, this, and this. Can you step in? Those are the things. So that's just across the top answer, but underneath, it's systems and processes, structures, and relationships. Everyone has to know the goal. They have to know the plan to get there, and that's the process. And the relationship of knowing that they're going to be applied pressure for accountability, but they're also going to have support. We can pressure teachers all we want and tell them they need to do better, do better, do better. But if we don't analyze their professional development and where we're not supporting them, then it's a failure on us. And for us to look at a teacher and say, you're not doing a great job, that blame is on us if we're not supporting them. I'm not sure about Volusia County. Well, I am pretty sure about Volusia County. There aren't teachers out there. When I applied to be a teacher, I was the 10th person on the list when there was a glut of teachers. It doesn't exist there. We're not going to go find new teachers. If a teacher is harming a child or not being, has done everything we can, I get it. But I think the strength of being a leader is making sure teachers are better and are prepared and giving them the environment to be best they can be. Just be the best they can be. And when I see a teacher failing as a principal, I felt it was my fault. And if you look over the history, they actually called, one of the universities in the area called and said, as a principal, you have a very low attrition rate for teachers. How is that? What are you doing? I couldn't answer the question because he was asking me who I was, really. And I was able to answer it. I don't know if they ever used the data, but my teachers knew that if they were struggling, they'd be supported and that I wouldn't let them fail. So I think I answered that question. When teachers who make the difference, Pete Licata as a principal didn't make a difference in the classroom. He made it for the whole campus. But that teacher sitting in front of those students was the one who was making the difference. We better support them and give them every tool possible.
Thank you. What do you feel is the single most important piece of data that would drive Volusia County forward?
You're 58 points away from being an A district. If you want to calculate that over the 11 categories for grading, that's what, 5.5, I think, close. Single piece is difficult to determine. Learning gains was one that you can make significant improvement in. College and career ready was a lot lower than a lot of folks. I know that the students with disabilities could be improved, especially in the lower 25. There are several. So to look at one key piece of data, I don't know if I could give you that answer, and I don't know if that hurts me in my answer by saying that. But when you look at the 11 components that the state is asking, and the state isn't this all-knowing body that knows everything about education, but it's what we have to maintain and what we have to do. And when you look across those 11 cells, we need 58 points. It may not happen in a year, but it probably could, especially if you're looking at moving that graduation rate. There's a 10-point giveaway right there. When we're at 78% as a graduation rate, all right, that's a lot of kids. Out of 100 kids, we only have 78 graduating. That's one kid not graduating is a failure. But let's get that. That's a quick get right there. And by paying attention to those students right away, that's it. Your learning gains are another one. Let's get those resources that Ms. Haynes asked about. Let's get those resources in the paraprofessionals. Let's get them in the classrooms and double down in those classrooms. Make sure we're addressing the needs of the child, not addressing the needs of the class. Addressing the needs of the child, addressing the needs of the class. And those data cells will start showing up. This should be an A district. And I'm no Joe Namath predicting the Super Bowl victory. As a Dolphin fan, I don't predict much anymore anyway. Maybe a loss. But I can tell you, I could make this an A district with you guys and the team and my relationships and building that capacity and focusing on what's even more important. I don't want to be in a place where I'm saying that there's things going on here that shouldn't and it's a bad. This is a great place. This is a great place for opportunity. I want something to be very, very clear. This isn't a stepping stone for Pete Licata. This is Pete Licata's capstone. This is Pete Licata's capstone. It's not a stepping stone. This is the place that when I drove over the bridge and I gripped that steering wheel a little harder, and the person over here that knows me better than anybody knew something was up. So this is my capstone, not a stepping stone.
Let me ask you, you kind of touched on it when you were talking about the single piece of data and what's important. And one of the things that we're concerned about is the reading levels, the lowest quartile of our students at each level,
Right.
elementary, middle, and high school. What thoughts do you have on that? What successes, what programs do you think we need
So
to?
I was hoping that question came up, so here it goes. Lowest 25 usually is the focus of every school district, and it should be. And if you were to ask me one cell, if you told me I had to give you one cell, that's it. Because those kids are most likely not to graduate. So as we put the resources in, and not just in inclusion classes, in those lowest 25 and in those intensive reading classes at every level, or we focus on which teachers are teaching at the secondary level. Remember, we always put our best generals in the toughest fights. We need to start putting our best teachers in the toughest places. And the state doesn't reward us for that. The state rewards AP teachers and IB teachers and industry certification teachers because they get money when they graduate or when they pass the test through extra FTE and such. We have to start looking at how we can do something and be innovative in that area. Not out of the box, but forward thinking. Because those teachers are the most valuable because they're changing lives, just like every teacher, but they're changing lives that aren't supposed to be changed. and are predicted not to succeed. So not only would you double down and put those resources into those classrooms, you'd have to do a quick look, and I saw it today. When I walk into a classroom, the first thing I look for, and when they're doing their rotations for a reading class or third grade, you have your small group, you have your teacher talk, and then you have your independent. What we're finding is there's no accountability in the independent piece. We're finding that the kids are reading, kids are on task, but no one is checking up on what they're reading and have they understood and comprehended. Their fluencies are great, but the comprehension isn't there. Or do we know it's there? How do we know it's there if we're not asking that question? So we'd have to really look at the model of instruction in every class and the system that's there. But the model of instruction has to be accountable to every student by the teacher, and then the principal has to make that teacher accountable to making sure that's what's happening. Screen time, online learning, platforms, and I'm sure they are there. The other thing I'd like to talk about, and it probably goes back to Ms. Haynes' question, we'd have to be very careful about what we purchase for reading programs or math programs online, virtual. I'm sure there's a great many vendors who have great products, but a technology department can't keep up with the amount of schools that want to do different things. And that would be one of the big changes on how we move forward. We can't just start implementing, hey, this works for my school. Well, show me it works for your school. Why? Prove it to me. Where's the data? You're a struggling C school, almost a D school. Why do you still want a program that you've been using for 3 years? It's causing us fits, and it's not effective. I think we need to give autonomy to our principals in areas we can, but when we're talking about putting technology in classrooms with certain programs, reading and math, and on virtual platforms for kids, we got to be a little more specific, because technology departments are very hard to staff and man right now, because the technology world pays a lot better. But more importantly, we don't have the manpower to keep fixing computers or running out and fixing access points or loading programs. So I'm not sure if you have a technology program, technology committee that all technology has to come through before it's put into a school, but that needs to be one of the focuses, because we can't keep buying things and keep trying to service every program that comes down the street that someone wants to buy. Let's stick with a couple things that work. Prove to me with data that this is valuable in your system and why you've maintained your A. Because if you're a struggling C school and you want to buy something that you think works and hasn't been working for years, we're not buying it. And that's got to be a hard stop right there. And that's where superintendent makes a decision with input.
Thank you. Well, let me ask you this. What do you think your goals would be? What do you see yourself doing? Say you got this job. What would you be doing in the month of January? What would you see you'd want to be doing by the month of March, April, and then June? You obviously were given the easy questions to answer, weren't you? That's sitting right here, and I've gone over it multiple times, and I use 100. Some people use 90. I like to use 100 because 3 numbers sound better than 2. But for the most part, you need more time than 90 days to make an impact. But for the first 30 days, and this would be accountable through a spreadsheet, and every bullet point I have in here, as a draft, I need your input and I need your focus on it too, if I was superintendent, to say, no, you're not doing this. Yes, you're doing this. And look at it and say, I have to meet with you first and understand our communication. What do you expect of me, and how are we going to communicate to make sure we act as one board? Because nothing comes good of internal dissension when we aren't all on the same page. We're not going to agree on everything, but as a group we have to come to consensus. Then we go to the community. We go to the community and talk, and I think I talked about that with Mr. Cologne's question, and we hear from them. We hear from them. And they're going to say a lot of great things. And they're going to say some things that they want individually, but when you hear enough individual statements of the same, then we got to look at it. Then we come back to cabinet. We talk to cabinet and say, here's my protocols, here's my system, here's what the board expects, and we're going to follow through with this. And get that detailed process and system very, very clean. And it's a team. And when we walk out of that room, that's the decision we're making as a team, because it's going to meet that. Once we develop that, we move through the teacher unions and the staff unions and the mechanics union, we have to talk to them. Those are vital people. Those are important people. That's in the first 30 days. Still visiting every school. 87 schools in 100 days. That's probably why I put the 100. That would be important, to be at every school. That's not undoable. It's a big county. I'm used to a big county. I need to be in every school. And I need for everyone to see that I'm actively engaged and involved in every single school.
After 90 days, and doing an audit of every department, textbooks, I know that's been a big topic, online learning, anything that needs to come through, safety, with all those, through that 90 days, and it's very detailed here, 100 days, I go from a transitional leader to a transformational leader. I now have all the data that we need, that we can go through and start a new process for a strategic plan. We can't just put together a strategic plan that is good for a few of us. The strategic plan has to be put together with all of us. And the strategic plan has to be based on everybody's input. The strategic plan here was developed and approved, I think, in January 2016, and it was a 3-year plan, which means it's sunset about a year ago, roughly, right? Maybe a half a year ago. And it's time. And I think maybe waiting for a new superintendent is really good. But when we put that strategic plan together, after everyone has their input, it's not Pete Licata's, it's the school districts, it's parents. We put it together and bring it to you. I think a show of support and unity would be for Mr. Persis, you and I, to present that plan, to show the community that we are on the same page, and every decision moving forward will be predicated on that strategic plan, and it needs to be in alignment. And when we buy something and we spend money on something, it's because it matches the strategic plan. When we cut something, it's because it's not in alignment with the strategic plan. So that strategic plan has to have at least four or five pillars on it that show everything from student learning to employee health and wellness. That's huge right now.
Yeah.
And we can't forget that. So all that's got to be included, and we can't just do it here in this room. We have to do it out there. And once we put that strategic plan together, our principles and our answers, principles LE, not the person, our principles have to be predicated on that strategic plan that we all decided on as a community, as a school district, and move through that process. And it's a great reference point, because when you have those tough decisions, well, we always did it this way. We always got this. It doesn't align with our goals. It doesn't align with our plan. Mm-hmm. And it's not me making that decision. It was all of us making that decision. And that's how you avoid a lot of bad communication. Mm-hmm. It's not Pete Licata. It's not Carl. It's not any of us. Yeah. It's that entire strategic plan that made that decision that we got together.
Okay. Thank you. Board members, we have a little bit of time, so if you'd like to ask another question, would anybody like to ask another question? Ms. Cuthbert? Yeah.
Do you mind if I curtail a question on something you commented on with Mr. Persis?
Please.
You said that we had to be careful with our reading programs that we have in our classes and our instructional programs, mm-hmm. that they must be working positively to raise student achievement in order to reinvest time and money into them. Who do you give the autonomy to? Because a teacher who might have been used to using Reading 180 mm-hmm. has said, I have had, to her principal, I have had success mm-hmm. with a different program. Can I possibly, do this other program where I have achieved success with my students, especially a special education teacher?
Correct.
Would you agree to allow that teacher to do that, even though the principal may say, no, everyone in my school is doing Reading 180?
I think this is a perfect question that goes back to what we just talked about, that strategic plan. Is it in alignment with what we decided, and is the achievement there? As a principal, I know that when I have a teacher who's knocking it out of the park, my best quality was getting out of her or his way and let them continue doing what they're doing. And when you have data that supports that, we have to listen to that. I saw a classroom this morning where there was a great sectional learning, and there was an online learning platform going on, and that school went up, 54 points? To me, that's working. Mm-hmm. So, yes, I'm very familiar with Read 180. It was in all my middle schools when I was director of curriculum, and if it's maintained with fidelity, it's very successful with training of the teachers and such. I don't mean we're going to come in and start taking things out if they're working. That would be counterintuitive. But let's make sure we're not adding things on that we don't know if they work, and if we already have something available to us. We don't have the money to throw around to buy and have the flavor of the day. So I think your questioning is, would I overrule the principal on that? I think we'd have to communicate quite well to see why would you want to not have that constant program working when it's successful. Now, is it successful in her class and not in other classrooms? Now we have a different issue. It's not so much the program, it's what's going on with the other classrooms. And is there fidelity? So as we dive deeper into it, we find out really what the problem might be.
Okay. Thank you.
Good question there, Ms.
That was
Good question.
I don't like these corners. These corners are hard questions.
Mr. Cologne, you have a question? Yeah.
Yield my time to
Oh,
someone else.
go ahead. I'm sorry. I thought you were asking. Yeah. And Ms. Haynes, you have a question? Ms. Wright, anybody? No? Okay. Then let me throw it back to you.
Sure.
Dr. Licata, do you have any closing comments that you would like to make? As
I believe I'm honored to be here, first of all. And I think before I arrived here at the seat, you knew how I got here. You saw my history. You saw my success in closing the achievement gap. You saw my focus on every kid. Remember, lowering the ceiling doesn't raise the floor at any time. But I think after talking to me for a few minutes, an hour and a half, while that flew, you understand the why. You understand the why. And it goes back to that day coming home from basketball practice as a sophomore in high school and hearing those words about my father. I wasn't going to college. I had scholarships. I could have gone, but I had to go to work. And when he died, he was a teacher. And when he died, we had a funeral with about 3,000 people show up, and mostly teachers and principals and students. And it was interesting because I sat there, and it was sad that we've lost this person that everyone looked up to in the community. And I saw people walk up to me one by one and talk about the impact he had on his life. And it was like I was talking to myself. So, absolute honest truth, the next day I went down to University of Miami, gave away my share of my business to my brothers, and asked them if they would still include my academic scholarship, and enrolled in January, or actually in April, because I was too late. Enrolled in April and finished my degree on academic scholarship. They honored it, and knew I wanted to be a teacher at that point. I knew I wanted to be an educator, because the saying goes as he died, and my mother wasn't allowed to work, typical family back then, and he died poor, but he died wealthier than anybody I've ever seen. So that's the why.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your dedication to students. I can tell you it comes from your heart, and we all appreciate the many years that you've put into helping others and inspiring others along the way. Want to make sure that you know about the reception this evening, and we're looking forward. We'll all be there too, and should be a fun night, a good night, and then tomorrow morning, of course, you're back here.
Yes,
and
I think I am in the boardroom all day tomorrow. Which is,
yes, we have a room for you, I believe.
I'll bring a jacket
tomorrow. And,
my ear, I think, just chipped off somewhere back here.
Yeah, I'm sure. Hope you have a window. I don't know, but
that's fine.
Anyway,
I'm honored to be here. I know the other two finalists are strong. It seems like I know them. They're wonderful people, and I can't tell you thank you enough for allowing me to be in front of you and speak in front of you.
That's
and
great.
I appreciate the opportunity.
And you know that the board will be back in session on Tuesday, November the 12th, and we'll make our final decision at that time. So that's it for right now. So we'll adjourn this part of the meeting.
Thank you
we'll
very much.
Reconvene later.